Not all Big Ten stadiums are created equal. Some are loud, legendary, and packed every Saturday. Others, not so much. It's time to settle the debate. Which stadiums deliver and which ones fall flat? This is every Big Ten stadium ranked from worst to elite based on data, not just hype. Let's get into it. How are you doing today, Ted?
Oh, I'm doing great. I've been really looking forward to this conversation that we're about to have. It's a very off-season topic, but we're also talking about certainly in-season atmospheres a little bit, so I can't wait to get into it.
You know what? Let's just dive right in and explain what we're doing here, okay?
Yep.
So you always need just a summary. This is a model-based ranking system from 1 to 18, all the Big Ten stadiums ranked here, with one-third criteria weighting each. The first is 5-year home win percentage. Okay, so all the home games versus home losses, wins, losses, the percentage that you had over the last 5 years, that's a third of the model. Next, 5-year average attendance for your stadium. That's a third of the model. And last, in 2024, what was your capacity percentage? What kind of attendance did you get? Did you get 50%? Or did you get 115%? So those are the 3 points of this model, and we're going to model that out to see what the data says the best Big Ten stadiums are. And let's just dive right into it, because I know you're hungry to see these. Number 18, Northwestern University. And we're going to look at the new Ryan Field. Actually, historically, it's been Ryan Field, recently renovated in Evanston, Illinois here. A 1.3 out of 3, a total of 3 score for the number 18 overall ranking. What do you think about Ryan Field?
Well, yeah, so they recently tore down the old Ryan Field. They're kind of playing at a temporary stadium, and the new Ryan Field, I think, is supposed to be a little bit nicer, a little bit more multi-purpose. But it really doesn't matter what kind of stadium, whether it's the old, the temporary one, or the new one. Northwestern, it's been tough to draw fans. It's tough. I mean, one, you're in a big market with a lot of professional sports in Chicago, and Northwestern it's a tough job to really succeed at. Northwestern, they've had some successful seasons over the years under former head coach Pat Fitzgerald. A few years ago, they won 8 games under Ryan Braun at the time. It's hard being in a big market and not being an overly successful team. Out west in Los Angeles kind of has this deal as well, where it's like, if you're not winning, there's a lot going on where it's really hard to certainly invest in that. And Northwestern certainly has that. So I was kind of looking at these rankings, and I'm like, I'm 99% sure Northwestern is going to be at the bottom. And I love the I should say I love and don't love the Cats at the same time, because man, can they be pesky. They've had a lot of success over Wisconsin, the team that I'm mostly closely affiliated to in the past, and just over a lot of time they are the annoyance of the Big Ten Conference. We all have our Northwestern moment. I said that to the West Coast fans when they came in. You're going to lose to Northwestern when you should beat them by like 18 to 20 points. So, and the stadium's going to be like 20% full. So this is certainly no surprise at the bottom.
Yeah, the model here, 5-year average, the lowest attendance in the Big Ten with the old Ryan Field, and also capacity percentage. Northwestern doesn't really get a lot of butts in the seats, as you kind of alluded to. And also the 5-year home game win percentage, 43%, that's last in the Big Ten, and that contributed to the 18 ranking for the Northwestern Wildcats. And we're moving on here. Let's go. Believe it or not, the Rose Bowl is number 17 in the model, Ted. Seriously, with a 1.52 out of 3 score, oh my gosh, the Rose Bowl is a fantastic place. Been there. It's a fantastic atmosphere for the Rose Bowl game, but during UCLA games, it's a different story out there in Pasadena, California. What do you think of the Rose Bowl?
Dude, you mentioned it's tough. It's such a, it's got such a, especially with Big Ten fans. Of course, Utah was in the Pac-12, as you know, for many years, had success in Rose Bowl games during their time, making some Rose Bowls over there later during their Pac-12 tenure. And, it's got such a big place in the hearts, I think, of college football, both Big Ten fans, former Pac-12 fans, and really all college football fans. And especially on New Year's Day, it's such a great tradition. But then you go over to kind of how UCLA approaches this thing. Like, maybe for those of you that aren't as familiar with the geography of California, Pasadena is not close to UCLA's campus. Okay. So it's hard not having an on-campus stadium where you got to commute. I'm not going to get the exact commute right, but I think with traffic, sometimes it can take 45 minutes to an hour to get from like the UCLA campus out to the Rose Bowl. That in and of itself, no matter how good the team is, that's going to be a challenge right off the gate. And then UCLA is not the greatest team in the world. They've had some successful seasons. Remember that season a couple of years, what was that, 2022?
Dorian Thompson-Robinson,
yeah, with DTR and Charbonnet,
I
think as the running back. Like that was a really exciting year for UCLA. So it's like you combine those things, and it's certainly not surprising. Like I know they're locked into a Rose Bowl lease for like 20, 30 more years or something crazy. I always thought UCLA could benefit from like a 40 to 50,000 on-campus stadium, but I know their campus is pretty jam-packed down there in Los Angeles. So, it's not overly surprising. The same with Chicago. There's a lot going on. If you're not successful, it's going to be hard to kind of attract fans, especially when you're going all the way over to Pasadena. And there's certainly a long trek from downtown LA. So this is certainly not surprising as well for them to notch in at 17. It's a little bit of a bummer for me. I wish the Rose Bowl was a little bit of a bigger venue. When the Big Ten, when UCLA was joining the Big Ten, I'm like, oh, there's going to be a lot of opposing fan bases that are going to look to, especially in the Midwest where it's cold, maybe in November where they got to travel out there. Be like, there's going to be a lot of different colors. They'll be like, hey, we get to go to LA. Our team's playing in LA during some warm weather when it's kind of cold here. Yeah, let's make the trip. 30,000 people, 40,000 people are going to make the trip down.
So check it out. Speaking to your points here, why UCLA scored so low? Their 5-year average attendance, 46,000. You nailed it saying 40 to 50. And then also they are dead last in capacity percentage in 2024. Even in the Big Ten, 52% capacity. Rose Bowl's a big stadium. We know that, but 52% capacity. That's what's really hurting the Bruins. Beautiful stadium. The mecca of college football, the Rose Bowl game, but not during normal UCLA game. 17th overall. And now we're moving on here to the Shell. The Shell, number 16, with a 1.54 out of 3 score. University of Maryland at SECU Stadium in College Park. What do you know about the Shell?
So Maryland's an interesting one. Overall, like if Maryland gets a team that's like not Penn State, not Ohio State, you can see why it might end up number 16 on this list. There have been games over the years where you get, especially since they joined the Big Ten in 2014, especially as of late, like those Talia Tungavailoa years when he was on campus there quarterbacking Maryland, like they would really play up to their competition against the Ohio States, the Penn States, the Michigans. They gave them a really tough go. And the fans for like those games would really show out and it would be really good. But overall, consistently, I think it's been hard for Maryland to be able to draw fans to like a Maryland versus Indiana game or a Maryland versus a Northwestern game or a Maryland versus whatever school that isn't a marquee school within the conference as well. A lot of people view the Terps as like a basketball school as well. Historically, they've been better at basketball than they certainly have at football. Like a lot of these stadiums and fan bases that don't have a significant history of winning. Fans aren't going to come out in droves unless you really have a good season, unless you win a lot of football games. Maryland, prior to last season, had been winning maybe a little bit more in the Big Ten than maybe some people anticipated them to. 7-win seasons. They might have had an 8-win season thrown in there, but still, it's tough. You got to be able to win consistently to be able to get your fans to show up consistently.
Adding further support to your point, the thing that's dragging Maryland down and just the database ranking that we're talking about is only 36,000 fans on a 5-year average showing up to the games at the Shell. I mean, that's second worst in the Big Ten behind in front of only Northwestern. So when we're looking at the lowest 3 schools, Northwestern, UCLA, and Maryland, that's a tier within itself. That's tier 4 of the overall rankings. Now we're moving up to a tier 3. There's a lot of schools in tier 3, but that was the tier 4 here. So it's time to jump over here and look at number 15 and now a new tier 3. And that is the birthplace of college football at Rutgers Stadium, Piscataway, SHI Stadium with a 1.74 out of 3 score, number 15 on the list. cool. It's the birthplace of college football. I mean, this is where the thing began.
So here's what I'll say. Yeah, here's what I'll say about Rutgers is over the last handful of seasons, they've started this. Everybody's got their whatever color out. Penn State's got the white out, and everybody's got their color that they kind of go with. Rutgers blackout atmospheres at night have been pretty electric. Okay, so those are getting. I think they do it once a year. A couple of years ago, they did it against Nebraska. I think they've done it against Temple. I can't exactly remember who Washington. I think it was Washington on a Friday night. They did it last year, and that can be a pretty rocking environment. Rutgers with Greg Schiano has gotten better back-to-back bowls in the Big Ten. I think that's considerable success for a Rutgers team. So those blackout environments can certainly be really good. So those have really stuck out to me over the past couple of years. But consistently, like you get them in a noon slot, you get them in a 3:30, you get them in a game against like Michigan State or like a Big Ten West team. It's maybe there isn't as much juice, but hey, those Friday night blackouts they've been pretty fun to watch.
So, yeah, I wonder if that time spot that they're usually playing in contributed to really the metric that's hurting them, and that's the 5-year home win percentage of 53%. They're winning about a little bit over half their home games. Mm-hmm. And you think, hey, if there's not a lot of juice, maybe not a lot of blackout because an earlier game that could contribute to it. But nevertheless, there we go. So we've got Maryland at number 15, and we are moving on in our Tier 3 here. And next, the house that the Illini built. Number 14 with a 1.80 out of 3 score, University of Illinois, the Illini Memorial Stadium in Champaign, Illinois. The greatest city name in the world right there, Champaign.
Yeah, Illinois is they had some great atmospheres last year. They had the 100th anniversary of the Red Grange game against Michigan. That was a sellout. That was a CBS broadcasted game. That was a pretty big atmosphere. And they have put a lot, like Brett Bielema, their athletic director, Josh Whitman. There's been a lot of push. You get to big games like the Michigan game last season. They're going to be a really good team upcoming this year. So I'm sure there's going to be a push that say, hey, they do a lot to really get, especially these last couple of years, to really put a lot of effort in getting as many butts into these seats for some of these big games. Like you have to look back. I know 2022 was a really good year for Illinois. I thought they should have won the Big Ten West, but kind of faltered down the stretch that year. But historically, like before 2022, this was an Illinois team that was like, they were a bottom dweller. Really before Brett Bielema got there. So this is kind of a late surge. And I think if you do one of these lists, maybe in a couple of years, Illinois, I think could be maybe further up, certainly on this list. Brett Bielema, I think, is bringing a lot more juice into Illini football. There's no question about that. Both him and Whitman. Whitman, I think, is one of the best athletic directors in the conference right now. So, I think over time, this ranking is going to get higher. I think like the atmosphere itself doesn't appear to be earth-shattering or ultra loud or anything, but this is certainly a program that's trending in the right direction. They're going to get some bigger games, the Fox games, the CBS games, the NBC games. So I think there's going to be a lot more juice surrounding this program this season. Yeah,
what's pulling the score down is 40,000 average 5-year home game attendance. And so that's third worst in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of dragging them. If you win more games, you're going to get more butts in the seats too. So I could see this be lifted to 11, 12-ish over the next couple of years. Yep. Number 14, we got the University of Illinois. Now we're moving on into still in a Tier 3 here. Barely edging out Illinois is the Rock. Indiana University, another Memorial Stadium here. There's a lot of Memorial Stadiums in the Big Ten, and this is in Bloomington, Indiana, number 13 overall with a 1.81 score out of 3. The Rock. It's a cool-looking stadium, Ted. It is. I'm going to take, and you're going to present me with the data here in just a little bit. I'm going to say that prior to last season, this would have been like 16, 15, something like that. And I mean, you see it in the photo right there. They packed it in for some of these games when that team was winning football games. And there was a big time effort, kind of like Bielema at Illinois. There was a big time push vocally from Kurt Signetti. Said, get out to the stadium, see this football team.
and see what they can. And they showed out. And so they had a big noon game. I think that was against Nebraska, right? Where they just put it on them.
Mm-hmm.
They put up over 100 on the Huskers. That was really their big showing. That was really their first big test last season. And they passed it with flying colors. There's no doubt about that. So it was really cool. Like that's kind of what I like about today's current age of college football with portal, with NIL. You can see some of these flips. You can see a team like Indiana. We've seen it recently with Arizona State out there on the West Coast and what in the Big 12, like, that what they've been able to do to really jolt and get a lot of fan interest. But yeah, I can imagine that prior to last year that this Indiana might have been pretty close to that lowest tier.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had a 91% capacity fill percentage last year in 2024, based on what you're saying, that great year and everything. Yep. Fans were coming out. Definitely helps in the model when a third of the weight is how many fans are showing up this last year. Yeah. So I think that you're 100% right. The Rock, though, at number 13 in the 2025 version of the every Big Ten stadium ranked here. We're moving on to number 12, still in tier 3, and that's the Furnace. One of the greatest stadium nicknames I think I've ever seen. The Furnace, Purdue University. And that's Ross-Ade Stadium in West Lafayette, Indiana, with a 1.88 out of 3 rating. Number 12. There was actually a pretty good sized jump from Indiana to Purdue in this model. We're still in the tier 3, but there's been a jump already. What do you think about Purdue?
Oh man, this is I talked about how Northwestern can be an annoyance, where it's like everybody has their Northwestern moment. It seems like everybody has their, maybe not lately. I mean, Purdue under Ryan Walters was an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, let's just call it what it is. Going 1-11, their only win against Indiana State last season. But you get this stadium in a night atmosphere, prior, like the Jeff Brom era specifically. Yeah. Like that's when the spoiler makers were activated. They earned that nickname with big time upsets, knocking off Ohio State. That was the Tyler Trent game in 2018 when Ohio State, Urban Meyer was a top 5 team, and they went in there and they beat them by at least 20 points. Iowa, I think that was like 2021. I think they were a top 5 team, and they knocked them off in that season. Like they have this reputation. And you get them in a nighttime atmosphere, that can be a pretty rocking venue at Ross-Ade Stadium. So this is I think, when Purdue is good. And even last year, I remember they played a Friday night game against Oregon, and they were a bad team. Like, let's just go even halfway through the season. Let's kind of call it what it is. But they still brought the energy at that point in time. Purdue has a really of course basketball. They're a great basketball school, but whether it's at their basketball arena or whether it's at Ross-Ade Stadium, this is a dedicated fan base. Purdue and football and basketball has dedicated fans, whether they're losing a lot or whether they're not going to certainly sell out every single game, but you get them in some of these big time atmospheres, and they'll certainly deliver. So, being at number 12 and prior to this Ryan Walters era, like Jeff Brom, they had success. They went to a Big Ten championship game a couple of years back. So, when they had Aiden O'Connell and they were throwing the ball around and they were having success. So it certainly doesn't surprise me that they're above some of the schools that they are right now.
97% stadium capacity fill percentage. Even last year with a tough year. 97%, that is a loyal fan base right there.
It is. It is.
Holy smokes. So, mad kudos to Purdue. We're moving on here to number 11. Number 11, the University of Minnesota at the Huntington Bank Stadium in Minneapolis with a 1.98 rating. Again, the number 11 overall rating with his Minnesota Golden Gophers here. So, what do you think about Minnesota?
I think that this is one of the more underrated crowds and atmospheres probably in the conference. I think when you take a look at when you maybe ask that whether it's the average Big Ten fan or really the average college football fan, hey, what are maybe, everybody's going to say the 100,000 seat stadiums or whatever stadiums. But when you look at somebody like Minnesota, I was there for the North Carolina game at the beginning of the stadium or at the beginning of the season, last season. That can be rocking. They've had some big games. Over the years, you got to go back to 2019 when they knocked off a top 5 Penn State team. That was a big time atmosphere in there as well. It's about a 55,000 seat stadium, but it certainly packs a punch. This is probably one of my favorite stadiums out there, even though it is a little bit smaller. This is a fan base that can certainly bring the juice. I'm very curious to see what maybe the consistency over a 5-year period is, but you get to a big game where Minnesota's at home and the maroon and gold faithful can certainly bring the juice.
66% of home game wins over the last 5 years. That's ninth best of the Big Ten.
You've done well.
It's one of the best, factors here for Minnesota. So kudos to Minnesota. We're still in Tier 3. We're moving on here to number 10, and that is the Woodshed.
Mm-hmm.
The Woodshed, Michigan State University, Spartan Stadium in East Lansing, Michigan. Number 10, 2.09 out of 3 rating. And what do you think of Michigan State?
Michigan State. So if you're looking at a 5-year period, you're going back to about 2020, 2021 type of time. That 2021 season is that great. Mel Tucker was the head coach. Kenneth Walker in there at running back. That was the year that they beat Michigan. Prior to this last season, that was the last time that Michigan lost a conference game, was in 2021 to Sparty at Michigan State. I would assume that now Michigan State, it's a bigger stadium. This is a good fan base, certainly into the Big Ten, but I would probably think that 2021 season certainly kind of brings that up a little bit in the history, kind of at the beginning of this 5-year period as well. They've kind of fallen on hard times a little bit lately, but when this team is good, and here's they have the resources to be good. Now, do they have the resources to beat Ohio State all the time, or Oregon all the time, or Penn State all the time? Maybe not, but they can certainly be in that next tier, 8 wins, 9 wins. They can be there fairly consistently. That's kind of where Michigan State sits right now. So I'm very curious to see how these numbers play out for Sparty.
You nailed it. 5-year average attendance, 70,000. Roughly. And y'all will need to forgive WildUte for putting the wrong abbreviation after East Lansing. And we're moving on to the last school in Tier 3 here. This is the last school, the highest ranked school in Tier 3 is the Coliseum.
Okay.
And the Coliseum is a cool stadium to go to. It's got a retro gladiator feel. Been to the Coliseum, experienced the crowd there too. It is one of the issues with the Coliseum, though, is the fact that they don't sell out every game. It's been hard as far as the attendance because it's such a large stadium. But still, USC in LA, Memorial Coliseum, number 9 with 2.15 out of 3 score. A pretty strong score when you're actually looking at the whole scope of it. The Coliseum is just a unique, cool place to go watch a football game. Highly recommend it. What do you think about the Coliseum, Ted?
Yeah, it is a cool and a unique venue. I love the exterior of the stadium. I love the look of the stadium, and we've seen it. I know you've probably seen it in the past from being a fan of the Pac-12. But this is when USC, there's so much when USC is good, they are as good as it gets. They are elite. They're showing it on the recruiting trail. When they got everything going, they are as good as anybody out there, and that stadium can be a really good environment. But you mentioned the size. I remember watching some games last year, their first year in the Big Ten, and even bigger games like that. They had a home game 3:30 on CBS where I don't know if it was sold out for that matchup. So. And, there, as we mentioned with LA, with UCLA before, where there's a lot going on. And if you're not USC in the mid 2000s, are you going to be able to pack 90,000 in every single week? I'm not so sure. I think that's overall, and you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but that's one thing that I've kind of gathered about sports, not just college football fans, but sports fans in general in Los Angeles. If the Lakers aren't winning, not as many people are going to show up at the Staples Center, whatever they call it now, right? Same with a lot of other sports teams. Look at the attendance for someone like the LA Chargers. It's just, and even they're a decent football team too. So I think in LA, it really depends on how successful your team is. If this team kind of gets better and better and better, yeah, I think you're going to put more people in that stadium. But look what they've been over the past 2 years. Last year in the Pac-12,
you've got to have swagger, like you're saying. You've got to have the swagger. You've got to have the
Right.
wins, especially in California, especially in a city like LA. And guess what? I mean, it's going to be crazy if you start winning and have that swag back. Pete Carroll era was nuts. But USC, one thing that's like always been interesting about USC, they always put like those jerseys too, like the retired jerseys in the stands.
That's cool.
And they actually don't consider those like seats. So they basically kind of wipe those out for like the attendance records and everything. So it can get up a lot higher than actually like is registered and everything. But still, Coliseum, a special place. USC number 9. And now we are moving into tier 2, Ted. So we've got tier 2, big time, Big Ten schools. The first, the Iowa Hawkeyes and Kinnick with a 2.31 out of 3 score, number 8 overall, Iowa City, Iowa, University of Iowa, the Hawkeyes. What do you think?
I'm going to be really curious to see which schools are like number 7, which schools are number 6. I talked about Minnesota being underrated. This might take the cake as the most underrated stadium in the Big Ten. This is, you get especially a night game, like Iowa. You can kind of see it in the photo that you have here. Like there is not a lot of room between the sidelines and the fans. The fans are right on top of you, which I think adds to this electric type of atmosphere. And we talk about we talked about Purdue being a very dedicated fan base. Iowa is extremely dedicated. You see, looks like they're doing a stripe out in this picture right here. You don't, and I mentioned, hey, maybe if you're not winning at this school, or if you're not that school, you're not gonna be able to pack it. Iowa packs it in. Like, and again, I think a part of the reason for that, Iowa has just under Kirk Ferentz for these last quarter of a century, they've just been so consistently good. You don't see Iowa going 4-8. You don't see them going 5-7. Sure, they might not be 9 or 10 wins every single year, but very rarely are they, sitting around like 5 wins or 6 wins or even worse than that. So I think being able to win at that type of consistent level certainly helps. And it's a dedicated, amazing fan base. They travel really well. It's one of those only show in towns in one of these Midwestern states that doesn't have a professional team. The Hawkeyes are the deal in the state of Iowa. I know we got the Cyclones in that state certainly as well, but man, the Hawkeyes are one of the biggest deals in the state of Iowa, no question.
They win 72% of their home games.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. And then also 100% capacity in 2024, I would imagine, if you looked many years back. They're selling out every game. Die-hard fan base. What a great fan base. Kinnick is a cool place. Man, all right. We're going to 7 here. You ready for this, Ted?
I'm ready for this. Now I'm on the edge of my seat.
Camp Randall. Jump around, baby.
Okay.
The University of Wisconsin, Camp Randall Stadium in Madison, Wisconsin, with a pretty strong 2.34 out of 3 overall score, number 7 in the Big Ten model. Gosh, I'll be honest with you. If you're ranking other like A4 level schools, a lot of these Big Ten schools would rank very high, but you're up against very stiff competition at the top. Camp Randall at number 7, bit surprising. Thought they would have scored higher. They model says 7. For Wisconsin.
I think there's an argument for Iowa to be above Wisconsin. I honestly, I'm not saying that as a slight to the Badgers. I think that highly of Kinnick Stadium and Iowa. Certainly right now, this is a Wisconsin fan base. I think that's right now they're falling on a little bit of hard times. That bull streak that went on for 20 plus years just came to an end. So I'm very curious to see how in the future, especially with where this program is going, is this team going to still be able to attract fans? Because we talked about the consistency with Iowa. What did I just mention? 20 plus years going to a bowl game. Wisconsin has been the mark of utter consistency, throughout. They've certainly had some highs, during the Brett Bielema era. They won 3 consecutive Big Ten championships and, making it to Rose Bowl. Everybody calls them the Buffalo Bills of the Rose Bowl, where they lost 3 consecutive games, TCU, Oregon, and Stanford in consecutive years. But yeah, this is a fan. Like I've been in attendance for some big Wisconsin games. 2010, when they knocked off number 1 Ohio State, I get chills just thinking about it. I just 85,000 in there to open up the game. David Gilreath returned the kick 97 yards for a touchdown. That's the loudest sound I've ever heard in my life.
Camp Randall. This was at Camp Randall.
At Camp Randall Stadium in Madison. And Madison is like, It is an elite college town. It is one of the best. I've spent many years going to Madison on Saturdays in the fall. So it's great. I think like when it comes to like a true like home field environment, tough place to play. I don't know how consistently high it should maybe be as a tough place to play, but you get them, like I mentioned, in like an Ohio State game and some of these other big games, they can certainly bring the juice. It can be a tough place to play, maybe in like a phone booth, but consistently, I think there's other stadiums and teams that are higher than Camp Randall.
Fifth largest stadium in the Big Ten as far as 5-year attendance, with over 75,000 average attendees per football game over a 5-year period.
Yep.
That's dang impressive. Wisconsin, number 7. We are still in Tier 2 here, and we're moving on. And this is one of my favorites here. Place that I've always wanted to go to a football game. Maybe one day I can make it out there. Great fan base. The Nebraska Cornhuskers, University of Nebraska, Memorial Stadium, Lincoln, Nebraska, number 6 overall with a 2.38 out of 3 rating. The freaking Sea of Red. How cool is that nickname for a stadium? Man, what do you think about it?
I don't think there's a more dedicated fan base in this conference. I really don't. We talked a couple of times about falling on hard times. I mean, I know Nebraska got to a bowl game last year, but still 6-6 last year still felt very stressful for a lot of the Cornhusker fans, and certainly not what they were expected last year. But they consistently 90,000 plus are showing up into this stadium. Even when a couple of years ago, when you had the greatest 3-9 team of all time in 2021, or you have these Scott Frost teams that find ways to lose at the end of this game. And I know the Matt Rule era, is certainly off to a okay start. Certainly not maybe the best that they're looking for, but I mean that atmosphere. I was not there, but how like that game against Colorado, like that certainly looked like it had some juice to it as well. And it's a tough place to play. I think like it'd be nice to think a lot of people like if you look at it from 40,000 feet from the conference, I think a lot of people specifically in the Big Ten office in Chicago are hoping that Nebraska really at least gets back to like an 8-win team or a 9-win team, because you can really come up with some big time environments, and especially for those folks in those TV offices. They want Nebraska, I think, to be on a bigger stage so they can really showcase this fan base, so they can really showcase this great stadium. But man, going back to their days in the Big 12 and even like early Big 10, when they were winning 9 games, when they were winning 10 games under Bo Pelini, they had some rocking atmospheres, and we'll see if they can certainly get back to it. But this is as dedicated as a fan base as you're going to get, and the fan base is as much as the stadium as the architecture, as anything that the building is as much of when it comes to these things.
So 5-year average home attendance, approximately 90,000. You mentioned it. Capacity for 2024, 102%. Yep. Standing room only. But what's knocking Nebraska down is that 5-year home win percentage. They're actually only winning 61% of their home games over the last 5 years. Throw out COVID in that time frame. Mm-hmm. So Nebraska shows out at number 6 largely because of that home game record over the last 5 years. And this is where there's going to be some controversy starting now, okay? We're still in Tier 2. But these last 2 teams in Tier 2 are going to surprise a lot of Big Ten folks. This is what the model says. We'll talk more about it. Okay. Number 5, Washington Huskies.
Okay.
University of Washington, Husky Stadium in Seattle, Washington, known as the greatest setting in college football. Sailgating, Ted. Sailgating. That's sailing on a sailboat and tailgating. My goodness gracious, with a 2.41 out of 3 overall database score. This is considering a lot of information from the Pac-12 era with the home win percentage. And so that needs to be considered here. But they show out number 5, and that's a bit surprising to me. Didn't think that Washington would show out that high, but I can say that my Utah Utes struggled mightily up there at Husky Stadium and ate a lot of losses over the years. It's a tough place to play.
I bet that 2-year period, when you talk about winning, the winning percentage that we've been talking about, that 2-year period with Michael Penix, I'm sure certainly has something to do with that. And Kalen DeBoer, they had some great teams, and we know how well they did that last year in the Pac-12, making it all the way to the national championship game before falling to Michigan over there. That season was, I think, it was really highlighted by the national media. That great atmosphere they had in that close win against Oregon during the middle of the season. What a game that was. Man, I just keep on looking back. Sometimes I just think to myself, man, how great was that last year of the Pac-12? Man, that was so many good teams, and just so great quarterbacks and great players and great games. And that was certainly one of them over there in Seattle. I went out to Washington State last year, and I kind of drove by this area, and it is a scenic area. It is a very scenic campus, certainly, as well. Washington kind of has their, kind of like the geology of the state. It has its peaks and it has its valleys, I think, as a football team. And lately, prior to last season, we saw under Kalen DeBoer that they were certainly achieving some of those peaks that the Huskies have had. So when you factor in the 5-year period, it certainly doesn't surprise me that they're as high on this list. But in a big game setting, I think Washington can be one of the loudest and one of the best home field environments out there.
Absolutely. It's extremely loud. 5-year home win percentage, 83%. That is fourth best in the Big Ten, and that is lifting these guys. Holy smokes. Washington, number 5. Last school in Tier 2, the Zoo, Autzen Stadium, University of Oregon in Eugene, Oregon. 2.48 out of 3, getting very high on the scores here. Number 4 overall. Freaking Zoo, one of the loudest stadiums on planet Earth. Autzen Stadium, crazy fan base, Duck fans. What a cool stadium, too. How it's built straight up, unique stadium. Love it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this is, of course, when everybody talks about Autzen, they draw back to October 12th of last year, where Ohio State goes in there, and you have some of the image where Ohio State fans are just plugging their ears, and it's just a raucous environment. When you combine like this, I would bet the percentage of that this stadium is filled over the years is in the upper 90s. Like it helps that Oregon is a great football team. But this is this is kind of like, one of those only game in towns. I know they got the Trailblazers in the NBA and the Timbers in the MLS up there in Portland, but this is kind of a very unique college town. It's one of those only game in town where there's a lot of fans that come from all across the state to be able to flock, pun obviously intended, over there to Autzen Stadium. But yeah, this is one of the loudest stadiums. I'm gonna be there during the summer, possibly being there maybe during next fall as well. So this is one that I think is it's as good as it gets. I think the 3, and I know exactly the 3 obviously that are going to be above them. They're good environment. There's good. It's because their teams have been ultra successful is probably why those 3 are where they are at. But I think when it comes to like a true raucous, tough place to play environment, I think Oregon proved last year that I don't know if they're bested by anybody. Josh Pate said they were the loudest environment, the best environment within the Big Ten Conference. So man, Duck fans, they certainly bring it. The Big Ten already has had great tough places to play, and just adding Autzen to it just certainly puts it over the top.
109% stadium capacity in 20. How's that even legal? I don't even know how that's legal.
I think they got close to. I think the stadium capacity is like 55. I think it is. I thought they got close to 60 for that Ohio State game. I don't know how they packed all those people in there. I'm sure they broke every single fire code that was there, but they packed them in.
They've got a 92% win percentage over the last 5 years.
They win a lot.
The one thing that's dragging Oregon down is just the overall stadium attendance, right? Because it's not as big as some of these top 3. But really, it's nuts. It's hard to win at Autzen, an amazing stadium. We have reached Tier 1 going forward here, the top 3 schools. And number 3 on the list is Happy Valley, the whiteout, Penn State University, Beaver Stadium, University Park, Pennsylvania. with a whopping 2.75 out of 3 score and the number 3 overall rating. Massive stadium, crazy fan base. Penn State.
Well, when you look at some of these three, and we know now who the top two are on this list, Penn State has not won as much as those top two schools, and winning percentage is certainly a part of this. The reason why Penn State and these other two, I'm going to let you reveal the first two in there. It's because of the capacity. And Penn State, man, it's we all know about the whiteout, and there's been so much talk in the Big Ten of like, man, we need to get these Ohio State games. They got a big game against Oregon this year. We need to get those at night. We need to get those in the whiteout. I mean, that's on my ultimate college football bucket list. I would love to go to a whiteout game at Penn State. We've all seen the clip of in like 2016, the Michigan quarterback coming out there and the stadium just absolutely rocking. I'm always like, I try to be in the head of that opposing quarterback. You're going out for that first drive of the game, and you've got all these things in your head. You've got these scripted plays in your head of what you're going to run. You got to, hey, are we going to read the defense? Are they in man? Are they in zone? You got all these things in your head, and then all of a sudden, you just, all of this noise goes into your head, and you just see all these crazy lunatics in central Pennsylvania screaming and all that, and all of it's like, this is where the scribbly lines on the NCAA football games and now the CFB football games, this is the origin of the scribbly lines, right? Because just the sheer size of the stadium and then the sheer decibel level that they bring, and like the playoff game in the afternoon against SMU, that was pretty raucous as well. So they can bring it certainly during the day, but they get a lot of praise and for their night atmosphere that is the whiteout.
107,000 people show up to these games for the last 5 years. 107,000 people. This is one of the biggest stadiums in the world. Happy Valley capacity over 100% in 2024 with that strong season. Win 78% of all home games over the last 5 years. There's good reason that Penn State's number 3 on this list, and we're in the tier 1. And we're going to go here to the final 2. This one is going to surprise folks and possibly upset many. But the shoe gets the number 2 spot, Ted. Ohio State University, Ohio Stadium in Columbus, number 2 overall with a 2.84, barely getting edged out for the number 1 spot. But this is one of the hardest stadiums to win at in the freaking world. The shoe. What do you think about Ohio State?
I mean, when your team is Ohio State, I mean that certainly goes into a lot of winning a lot. Part of this formula that you've presented and that I've kind of backed up a little bit is having a good team is like 60% of the battle, right? When you kind of factor in a lot of these stadiums, what makes a place difficult to play? Well, playing a difficult team is kind of the first part of that formula. And Ohio State is, they've got as much consistency over the last 20 to 25 years as anybody in college football. But yeah, it's we saw it in the playoff game against Tennessee, despite volunteer fans showing up pretty well. That can be a certainly raucous environment. Last year, they obviously had a lot of big noon games, and there is something to be said about you occasionally get a really good atmosphere for a big noon game, but there's no doubt that even for like a CBS 330. You get a bigger and better atmosphere for that environment. And then, of course, the night games that are on NBC now in the Big Ten, as opposed to the big noon game. But when you're Ohio State, when you draw as much numbers as they do, when you're as good as they are, that's going to be Fox's number 1 pick every single time, especially when you kind of because West Coast teams home games can't be on big noon. So naturally, especially last year, a team like Ohio State is going to be playing in a lot of big noon games. They were selected already for 2. That Michigan-Ohio State game, that's at noon already, and the Texas-Ohio State game is going to be at noon. I think last year they played something like 8 or 9 big noon games, something like that. I think they're going to be in that same bucket this year as well. They're going to be a prime candidate for a lot of big noon games as well. Ohio State, Penn State is in Columbus. I think that's going to be a big noon game this year.
Big noon Buckeyes. The big noon Buckeyes.
Big noon Buckeyes. There we go. I'm going to steal that. So it's certainly an iconic stadium. It's Of course, Kirk Herbstreit infamously called it the lunatic fringe. It is like when we talked about the Nebraska fan base and how dedicated they are. Ohio State is dedicated just in a different way of just like how ridiculously high their expectations are each and every single year. It's kind of crazy. You got to respect it to some effect that says we will only settle for perfection. Remember how Ryan Day was going to be out of town after they lost to Michigan and he turned around and did what he did. So, I think that certainly that fan base plays a lot into, and of course, having the size of the stadium plays a lot into this ranking.
Number 1 overall is the Michigan Wolverines and the Big House with a 2.86 out of 3 overall score. University of Michigan, Michigan Stadium in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It is the biggest stadium in the Big Ten, one of the biggest stadiums in the world. It wins 5-year home average attendance with 110,000 plus fans per game. It fills out, at least in 2024, 103% capacity. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It is massive. And then over the last 5 years, Michigan's winning 85% of its football game once you toss out that COVID season. Michigan ends up at number 1 on the list, the Big House.
Yeah, Michigan is certainly one of those fan bases. When you combine the dedicated fan base with the size of the stadium and then with the winning, they won 3 straight Big Ten titles, 2021, 2022, 2023 before the downturn last season. So, and then of course the national championship season to go along with it in 2023. So when you combine the success, you combine that this is like, even when Michigan wasn't doing that well, to Rich Rodriguez and Brady Hoke and some of these other coaches, like they were still packing in a lot of fans. Like this is not something where all of a sudden, now only 60, 70,000 people which is crazy. Only 60 or 70,000 people. That's more than Autzen Stadium that we talked about. That's more than Minnesota. That's more than a lot of these stadiums that are out there. But they're still packing it in even when they aren't. So I will say, from people that have recently attended Michigan games, this is not the loudest stadium. It's not the most difficult place to play. You can kind of see with the image. It's certainly not built up. It's more built out as far as the architecture. So the sound can kind of go straight up. So it's not like an insanely difficult place to play in terms of the noise. Like if you want to rank toughest places to play, there's a chance Michigan might not be in the top 5 on this list. Well, maybe they get
probably Autzen with how it's built up.
Yeah, maybe number 4, number 5. I'd really have to look at a whole list and see what it is. But in terms of that type of environment, it's maybe not as intimidating as one might think it is. But it's certainly still one of the best venues out there. Still one of the most iconic venues out there. But please, can we get 2 tunnels? Can we please get 2 tunnels in the stadium to avoid some of these fights? Please.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, Michigan's been winning 85% of all of its home games. Holy cow. So, Ted, you saw the database list. What are your final observations and thoughts?
Yeah, it didn't surprise me that the 100Kers were the top 3 based on the data that were out there as well. It's impressive that a stadium like Autzen, considering based on the data points that we're kind of circling around here, a 55,000 seat stadium, when the number of attendance is factored in, for them to be that high on the list, I think speaks to the fan base, speaks to the team, and how consistent they've been in being able to win. So I think that certainly is very impressive out there. You got both them and Washington. This is just my personal opinion. I think like the Pacific Northwest teams, when you talk about fan bases, I know USC, and we talked about kind of them before and how maybe when they're not winning, they're certainly, maybe not coming to games as much. But I've been throughout, kind of monitoring this in the first year in the Big Ten. I've been very impressed with the Pacific Northwest teams. I love both. I love both of those teams right now. I think both of those fan bases are dedicated. Both of those stadiums can just be, I think they can, in a one game phone booth, they are, I think, more intimidating places to play than the stadiums down in Southern California. Certainly. So yeah. And like I said, I think Iowa is probably one of the more underrated venues in the Big Ten. I'd probably say that's like a top 5 toughest place to play in the conference. Maybe even top 3. That's maybe something after this that I'll maybe make a list and do. But that is a tough place to play. And it kind of goes with the team where it's just like, man, another punt? How is it only 13-10 in the fourth quarter? It just drives you insane when you play at Iowa sometimes. So overall, not overly surprised with kind of how the data turned out. But I think if you kind of were doing a toughest places to play list, it might be just a little bit different in some spots.
Amazing insights. Fantastic conversation. Where can folks find you at? Big Ten
Yeah,
Ted.
you can find me on Twitter at Big Ten Ted over there. You could find me on YouTube and Apple and Spotify podcast platforms as well. So covering Big Ten football certainly all year round. So thanks for having me on. This was a great conversation, one that I was certainly looking forward to, and I hope we can talk again soon sometime.
Every Big Ten stadium from worst to elite. Do you think we nailed it? Or do you think that we're way off base? Drop your lists in the comment below and let the debate begin. And if you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and check out the Big 12 Stadium ranking video as well. More college football breakdowns coming soon. Class is dismissed.